Good morning and welcome to the Men's Leadership Network. We're glad you could join us this morning. I want to say a welcome to all of our satellite locations in Cool Springs, meeting at Bricks, in Nolensville, meeting at Highway 55, and in Nashville, meeting at Flavor Catering at Jason's place of work. So that's exciting. So I want to remind everybody that we're going to go for about 30-35 minutes, and then we're going to have some time for questions. So if you have questions and want to get those into us, you can do that two ways. One is through email at questions@mensleadershipnetwork.com, or the second is by tweeting them in at leadership_net, and we'll put up a reminder about halfway through so you can remember to get some questions into us as well. This morning it's my privilege to introduce Jason Crockarell. Jason began his career in Nashville as an entertainment caterer for movies, concerts, and other productions while traveling across the country. He later then joined the culinary staff at the historic Merchants Restaurant as a line cook. Over the next few years, he was promoted to sous chef and continued up the ranks until he became the corporate chef over 4 restaurants. At that point, he left to assist Green Hills Grill and their expansion of 3 new restaurants. It was shortly after this point in his career, which involved high amounts of travel, that he decided to take his profession in a direction that would allow him to be home each evening with his beautiful wife and now 2 daughters. Thus, Flavor was born. In a few short years, Flavor has created meals with its distinct style of service and food for clients including Live Nation, CMA, Skimmerhorn Symphony, Ryman Auditorium, Vanderbilt Medical Center, Universal Music Group, and many, many more. Jason, Leah, Elsa, and Selma have been Rolling Hills partners for over 9 years. This partnership over the years has included hosting community groups, launching Celebrate Recovery, teaching Sunday school, and being a member of A6. Please welcome me in joining Jason Crockarell.
Jason. Oh, hey man, thank you so much for doing this. This is fantastic.
Awesome.
So, hey, tell us a little bit about your family, but also your faith journey.
Yeah. Well, let me say, and I'm just humbled to get the opportunity to be here. And some of the guys that have come before, I think about Joel last week and did an amazing job. And also want to give a shout out to the guys downtown, 618 Ewing today. Hopefully the sausage biscuits got down there okay. Yeah, a little bit about a faith journey. It really goes back to when I was a kid, and my parents were just really intentional about Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and we were in church every time the doors were open. My brother and sister were just great Christian role models, great students, and so just really blessed to have that core. I think about the age of 16 or so, I found myself in a stage where I was really just questioning things, and I guess it was probably, if I'm being honest, was kind of a rebellious time for me. And it really started at a dark time. I walked away from my faith for a good period of time, and really spent about 10 years just kind of wandering. Went into a pretty dark lifestyle. Drugs and alcohol were a big part of that. And, it was only through the prayer of my parents, my mom, being on her knees, on a daily basis, just praying for me to come back to God. Fortunately, towards the end of that time, I met Leah, my wife, and I just remember seeing her for the first time, and I was just blown away. I'm like, this girl's amazing. I'll do anything, whatever it takes. I'm gonna figure this out. When we first started dating, and then even as we just got married, Leah was like, "Listen, those things are not going to be a part of our lifestyle. They're not going to be a part of our family." And, if we want to continue this, then, you're going to have some decisions to make. And she was really the spiritual leader of our home in the very beginning. Drew us back to church. And so, like I said, I was willing to do whatever. I'm going to, if that's what it means, I'm putting it all down. I'm going to make it work. But she brought us back to church. And I remember, we had started visiting churches, and went to a church, and the pastor came out, and he was wearing jeans and Birkenstocks and like a flannel shirt. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know that was an option. I grew up in the clip-on tie era, and I was like, hey, I can be who I want to be and come as I am. And I was really drawn to that. And so that was kind of the first step of me kind of comfort level in church. But the other thing was accountability. They were asking for people that were willing to teach second grade students, and I had no clue what I was doing, but I raised my hand. I was like, I'll do it. But the thing that gave me was accountability, because then every Sunday morning, man, those kids were sitting there waiting for me, and I didn't have a choice. Like, I had to be there. Too. And then when we came to Rolling Hills and we immediately plugged into a community group, same thing, man. That community group, those people were there every Sunday and they're looking for me. Hey, where were you on Sunday? So we had that accountability. So I think early on, like plugging in and getting involved and having, people that really required that of you, made all the difference in the world of, kind of where I was and where I am today.
Yeah. Jason, that's amazing. And I love the way God works in our lives and draws us back to himself, and he's constantly pursuing us. And I remember when you guys came to Rolling Hills, I remember being in the movie theater, and there was a struggle that was going on there because, as Thomas mentioned earlier, you were, merchants and at Green Hills Grill, but yet you had this calling or this desire to start your own, catering company. Tell us about starting Flavor and how that all came about.
I had been a chef in Nashville for about 15 years, and at that point, and chef's life is mostly weekends and nights and long hours. I mean, I mostly worked 7 days a week when I was in the restaurant business, just because it was my baby, it was my thing, it was my food. I had to be there, and so just didn't really have that quality of life that I wanted to, and. We found out that we were going to have our first child, Elsa. And Leah and I were sitting there talking, and I was like, I got to get out of the restaurant business because I don't want to be that dad that's not there. I want to be intentional about being at home and being present. And so I took a job as the chef of Baptist Hospital for a big corporation that did food service for hospitals. And it was definitely the antithesis of what I thought I would have been doing when I went to culinary school. Like, I saw these big chefs, and I'm like, oh, I want to be the chef at this fancy restaurant. And, it was kind of all about being the chef. And being a chef at a hospital is not a really, glorious thing. Low sodium diets are not very exciting. But I wanted to be intentional about being at home, and that gave me this quality of life. Although it wasn't very glamorous, it gave me the time to be at home. But I'd been there for a couple of years, and the corporation that I worked for lost the contract. And it was interesting because I had always been that person that kept achieving that next goal and working hard. And I went from line cook to sous chef to corporate chef, and it came natural to me. And so to lose my job kind of in that, by no fault of my own, was really hard for me. I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, why is this happening? So they came to me and said, we want you to travel and be on the road 4 or 5 days a week, and you're going to be over this big region. And we had just come to Rolling Hills at that time. We had a 1-year-old. I had this new church home, this new child. I had just moved into a new house, and I was like, I don't want that. I don't want to be gone 5 nights a week. And so it's interesting because Rosanna, Leah's sister at that time, came to her and said, I think Jason would do his own thing if you would support him, which was really crazy because it's kind of a random hey, I think you should support your husband in doing this. And it's kind of out of left field. So immediately Leah comes home to me and is like, hey, would you do your own thing if I supported you? I was like, yeah, I probably would. She's like, well, okay, we're going to do it. And so, with 2 weeks and about, a couple $1,000s, I didn't have a kitchen. I didn't have any clients. I didn't even know what we were going to be called. I quit my job, and I remember sitting around the table with Rosanna and Ricky, and we were just talking about, what should we call this thing? What should it be? Interesting thing happened. I was looking for a kitchen. I didn't have any place to produce food, and I heard about this kitchen that was available, and I happened to call, and I was like, hey, I need this kitchen. Could we work something out? And the guy was like, hey, I used to be a line cook for you 5 years ago. You remember me? And I was like, yeah, I remember. He's like, you can have anything you want. Just, gave it to me. You can come down here and run it. And so we were just really blessed. I mean, I look back at the faith journey that has been this time of, I can remember after the first year or so of being in business, and I remember coming to a point where I didn't even know if we were going to make payroll. And somebody came and said, hey, I've got an event in 6 months, but I really want to go in and pay you now. And it was just the amount of money I needed to pay payroll. Like, who does that? Yeah. Like, who just gives you money? Like, hey, I need you this, you know? I can remember, like I said, we needed that kitchen and I couldn't find it. I'm looking for it. And God just provided, like, over and over. There's so many steps along the way. I do think, too, one thing, we were here after the first couple of years and we had been at Rolling Hills for a while. And I think like a lot of guys, I was really trying to physically do it all myself. And I was working as many hours as I could. And I was, it was all about me and like what I could accomplish. And I remember being here on a Sunday morning and you gave a message and you had us all just lay out our hands. You said, open your hands. And you said, you got to turn it over to God. You're not in control. And it was exactly what I needed to hear at that moment, because I was doing everything I could physically and mentally, of me, but I hadn't given it over to God up to that point. And that's really what he wanted. He wanted me to just turn it over to him. And from that day forward, man, it's just like, work that, more work than we can handle.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. Yeah, and you fast forward 9 years, and you're basically the number one caterer in Nashville, and you do every big event. Every artist, every musician that comes through town. In Ryman, the Opry, and everything. Do you have any good stories? Any good stories about people you've done catering for, or writers that you've had?
Yeah, we have plenty of interesting stories, as you can imagine. Leah and I were talking about this as I was thinking about this. We ask all of our staff when they come to work with us, because we put them in environments where they're around a lot of famous people and they're privy to a lot of information about likes and dislikes of artists. And so we ask them to sign a privacy agreement. And so in respect of that, I have to be mindful of the things that I share. Although I didn't know what an organic goji berry was until it showed up on a rider, but apparently that's a thing.
Wow.
So, but I can tell you one really cool moment that I had. We were catering at the Ryman, and I was there outside of Aretha Franklin's dressing room, and I was there to make sure that basically she had whatever she needed. And I remember the moment she came out of the dressing room, and she had this kind of overcoat on, and she walked out to the edge of the stage, and they're playing Respect. Like, the music's going, the crowd's into it. And she drops this cape, and she's in this sparkly dress or whatever, and the lights come on, and she walks out and just goes straight into Respect. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, that's, that's Aretha Franklin. She's an icon,
Yeah.
So we get to be in a lot of really cool environments, and it is a lot of fun. It's a little bit crazy sometimes, but the thing about even this month, we get catered for guys like Chris Stapleton and Sturgill Simpson and Jason Isbell, and so that's the thing. Like, Leah and I've always been into the music experience, so we get to play our role. I can't sing, so
yeah,
it's what I do.
But you make it happen.
I can make us some food.
Yeah, and you're good too. Yeah. And Jason, tell us, how many employees do you have now? As you look at this, and how has your business grown through the years?
Wow. How has it grown? We probably have, I think we sent out 150 W-2s last year. So
wow.
a lot of folks. We're really blessed to have a lot of folks that are just, they come into our lives. They may work 4 hours a month. They may work 40 hours a week. It just, so we have a pretty wide base. But I think about the growth and where it came from. Really, it's just, I go back to the journey of faith. I see a lot of folks, whether they're starting their own business or a career path or whatever it may be, it's, I think you just have to be fully committed. You've got to jump in. You've got to have that faith. You've got to be willing to just, when I say full commitment, knowing that there's really no option. Failure wasn't an option for me, and so the challenges would come, and these big jobs. I can't tell you how many times I've committed to jobs 6 months before they happen and think, I have no idea how I'm going to pull this off, but here we go, let's go.
Wow.
But failure is just not an option, and I think when you're fully committed like that, you don't leave room for to back away or to be intimidated by it.
I love that. Tell me this, how, has your business, it's totally grown and exploded. Next couple of weeks, you got Vanderbilt, Homecoming, and then you've got CMAs. And how have you helped create a culture? Because people love to work for you. And people love, when you talk to somebody and they're at Flavor, man, they love it. How have you created that environment that your employees love being there?
I really am. I'm blessed to have great people. And really the people are what set us apart. A lot of people, I know to people who don't cook, it seems intimidating, but a lot of people can cook good food and take it to people and the logistics and all that. But really it's about the people. That's the thing, time and time again, I hear is just, we have great people. And it's really, we have a culture. Kitchens are an environment that are full of knives and fire and can be a pretty dangerous, kind of scary place. But we really require of our staff that they work in a culture and an environment that is we call it family friendly. But at any point, my 5-year-old or my 11-year-old could walk into the kitchen, and so the language and the music that goes on and everything that goes on around that needs to be where anyone's comfortable in that environment, and it's safe. And so I think that's different. And I think at first it kind of takes people back. They're kind of like, so you're going to tell me what I can and can't listen to, or what I can and can't say? It's like, listen, you're an adult. You can, on your time, you can do what you want. But in this space, we're creating an environment that's safe for everybody. So having that culture, and it really, it bleeds through, and people see it. It's evident. Our people are just different. And I think too, also, knowing kind of where my leadership skills end, and being willing to be vulnerable and reach out for help. Finding mentors and other leaders that can step in. When I first started this, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm sure you experienced a lot of this when you started Rolling Hills. It's like, all you know is what you know, and you build this thing, and it's not like other catering companies. You're gonna go, hey, here's the roadmap. This is everything you need to know about running a catering business. So, we build it and design it with the best of our knowledge. But there comes a point where my leadership ends, my leadership abilities. And so finding other mentors or leaders, through coaching or, different programs that can feed into you and say, hey, here's some best practices, or have you thought about doing this? And building that community of other leaders too, I think is really valuable, whether you own your own business or you're managing business or whatever your role may be.
And I want to compliment you on that, because I do think you've done that well. Because it is leading at a size when it's you and Leah, and you're a great chef, you're an incredible chef, but leading at that size versus leading at, when you have 50 employees or 100 employees or 150, that takes a different leadership style, and you've grown in that. And how have you done that? You talked about mentors, you talked about, because you've done some coaching too.
Yeah, so I started working with a group called Convene, and it has a coaching element in it.
Yeah.
So I've got a CEO coach, although I've never called myself a CEO. But it's got some coaching element, but then it also has a small group where I work with other Christian business leaders, and we meet once a month and work through, both the Christian aspect of from a devotional side and kind of from a spiritual side, but also from just a real tangible, hey, these are things that are going on in the market, and these are things that are going on in business, you know, whether it's health insurance or, just employee issues, HR, that kind of thing. Like, how do you handle these things? So finding best practices. I think one thing too, just specific that came out of that was from the element of conflict. And working through conflict. I know that, my natural tendency is to shy away from that. I grew up in a family that we didn't really, we weren't real straightforward about dealing with the issues. Kind of, let's push that aside and let's just, it'll go away or whatever. So having conflict is really hard. And nobody likes it, you know, but my natural tendency has always been to kind of withdraw when that comes up. But I think being willing to step into conflict, one quote that I heard through Convene that I thought was really, really important was, conflict is the price we pay for a greater level of intimacy. And I think that really applies not only in business, but also at home.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like I said, growing up in my family, we didn't really address a lot of that stuff. When I married Leah, I can remember the first time something came up, and of course I was kind of drawing away, and she was like, no, come here. We got to talk about this. We got to deal with this. You know, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna work through this. And it's hard. Mm-hmm. But on the backside of that, the intimacy and the relationship is so much greater, both in a personal and in a business.
Yeah.
And it draws people closer together.
Yeah.
And they know that, like, hey, we're going to deal with stuff. So you can't hide. You can't just push it under the rug. I'd rather know. And it starts, too, with us being vulnerable as leaders and saying, like, hey, I made a mistake. And letting everybody know, and not being afraid of showing your failures as well as your successes. Because ultimately, if you don't provide an environment where it's safe to express your failures, they're just going to hide it somewhere, and ultimately it's going to be a problem, and it's going to fester, and it's going to show up somewhere. So I think, you know, developing a culture where we're not afraid to dig in and deal with the tough issues.
Yeah. Well, Jason, I love that because I think leaders are learners, right? And so you never stop learning, you never stop growing. And I've seen that in you, in this hunger to get better at what you do. And so even in your leadership, what do you think is the most important about creating a work culture, both positive and negative? What do you think are the biggest impact there? Maybe conflict is one of those, or dealing with conflict?
Yeah, I think too, being available. You know, we got a lot of demands on our time.
Yeah.
We're pulled in a lot of different directions, and so you know, I think just as soon as I feel like I'm diving into something that I've really got to work hard on, and I've got to spend some time on, whether it's on the computer or whatever, somebody walks in and is like, "Hey, you got time for a second? Can I ask you a question? You got time to talk?" And my natural tendency is like, you know, no, I don't. Yeah. I really don't. Like, I got a lot going on. I got to do all this stuff. But in that moment, I've got to stop, and I've got to be, you know, available and say, okay, let's take this time. And I think too, from a spiritual aspect, I mean, think about it as a culture, you know, as a Christian business. You know, these conversations come up when we're riding in a van to go set up for an event, or wherever it may be, but being available for those conversations to happen, and being open about your faith, and being prepared to share. You know, God's going to plant those seeds, and He's going to give those opportunities, but we have to be prepared and willing to be available when those things happen.
Yeah, I think that's what separates Flavor from, you know, other good companies, is that you've built a Christ-centered culture, you know, and there's a difference there, you know, and I think for all of us who, you know, many men who are watching this, or many men who are here, you supervise people or in some type of leadership aspect in our work, but how have you created a Christ-centered? How do you bring Christ into Flavor, into the company?
Yeah, I think it's about being open and honest about your faith. I mean, we start at the very beginning when we interview employees, or we are in the hiring process. I let them know that when Leah and I started this business, that we were intentional, that our faith and our beliefs were going to be the core tenets of our business. And listen, we work in the food service industry, and we're in the music industry and doing these events and stuff. Not everybody believes the same way that we do. Yeah. And I get that. I mean, we have folks that come from different belief systems, you know, different sexual orientations, you know, a lot of different backgrounds. And that's great. You know, we want them, we want all these folks in a big melting pot into our business. But the thing that they've got to understand is that our faith is the core tenet. And so we require of them only that they carry themselves in a way that represents our faith and our family well, regardless of their belief system. And so being intentional, and I think too, like we've been blessed with a lot of resources. I mean, we were blessed with this opportunity to have a building downtown, right in the middle of downtown, and using that for things like men's leadership this morning or Thrive tonight. Like, how cool is Thrive?
I love it.
Last week having Carlos there talking about racial tension and these things, but using those resources and so it's public to the folks that work with us, like, hey, this is what's really important to us. And we're going to take these resources that we've been blessed with and we're going to use them for God. And you can participate in that. And then also too, being a part of JMI. I mean, we've sponsored kids through Flavor from, I don't know how many, I think from the very beginning. But being intentional about letting our staff know that, like, hey, what the work that you're doing, serving these people, is not only benefiting those folks, but it's benefiting folks in Moldova, and Red Hill, and Amazon. So whether they choose to believe the same way or not, they're having an impact for Christ.
Yeah, I love that. I think what you've done is you've looked at every aspect that God's given you, and every resource and said, okay, how can I use this for God's glory? And if it's a building, or if it's our staff, you cater the entire JMI gala. Just, and I love that. That's your heart, How have you, because I think this is important, but how have you kept Christ first and your family as priorities amidst all the growth, amidst all the success, right? How have you done that? Because there's dollars, and the more gigs you take, the more money you make. How have you said, no, my priorities are going to be Christ, and my priorities are going to be my family? You know what I'm saying? How have you done that?
I think the honest answer is really hard. Yeah. It's a struggle every day. I think as an entrepreneur and a small business owner, as you kind of get out into that world. And really, in any aspect of business, but more and more opportunities come your way, right? And so people are like, unfortunately, everybody thinks they want to be in the restaurant business. And I don't know why, because it's really hard. So you get all these different people coming to you saying like, hey, I want to do this, or I want to, And so what Leah and I, we've been intentional about putting a filter in place that says that if a new opportunity comes our way, and I can delegate some of the responsibilities that I currently have to free up some time so that I can take on this new responsibility or this new opportunity, then I can take it. But if I can't do that, and it's gonna require more time than I'm currently given to the business, then I have to walk away from it.
Wow.
And so that filter has stopped a lot of things, a lot of opportunities. And just being intentional about that and protecting it. I don't have any real hobbies outside of work because I don't have time for them. When I leave work, everybody knows where I'm going. I'm going home, I'm going to be with my girls, and I'm going to enjoy as much quality time as I can.
I think that's huge, because if you don't have that filter, right, it's like you start taking everything. Yeah. And then what you got in to do this for, so that you could have time at home, or you could have, prioritize Christ, prioritize church. Pretty soon, this takes over. Yeah. And I think that's wise advice to all of us, wise advice to me. Just thinking about that. Give us 2 takeaways as we think about being a spiritual leader, and we talk about spiritual leadership. Give us 2 takeaways for us as men on being spiritual leaders.
I think for me, it's about service, that we're called to serve. I think about, the verse says, even the Son of Man God came to be, not to serve, not to be served. That's our role. We have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to serve my staff well, my teammates. I have a responsibility to serve my family well, and then also the community. And so service is, a big part of it. And I think the other thing is faith. I was listening to a podcast, a sermon the other day about the story of Jesus and the disciples in the boat and the storm coming. But even before that happened, Jesus said, get in the boat and let's go across the lake. And across the lake was a place that was out of their comfort zone. It wasn't a place that they would normally go, right? And so just that step of faith of being willing to get in the boat and go across the lake. And I don't know where that is for other people. For me, it was starting my own business. You know, for some folks, it may be a new career path or whatever it may be. But just being willing to have that leap of faith. And then the storms come, right? And they continue to come. I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years, and I can't tell you the number of storms that we've experienced. But in that moment when he says, you know, we have to wake Jesus up to say, hey, Father, this is going on. And he says, where's your faith? Didn't I help you before? And every step along the way, you know, whether it was, you know, payroll or clients or kitchen or whatever those mean, he answered every time. And so just, you know, resting in him and knowing that he's going to show up in the storm. He's going to be there. He's there now.
That's powerful for all of us, isn't it? Especially in this day and time in our country and everything else, just knowing that God is sovereign and we're called to walk by faith and trust, and God's going to take care of it. Yeah. So what do you want your legacy to be?
I think real simply just that I loved and served well. I loved those around me. I loved my girls and my family. And that I served people well. And really my hope is that my girls will carry that legacy on and they'll do the same. And I think if they do that and they're willing to do that, I'm good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Here you are as like the best chef in all of Nashville, and
before.
Yeah, you're up there, and this incredible business. But I think your priorities have really been the distinction, you know, and you've created a culture that people want to be, want to serve, and I just want to commend you for that. And as you think about that you want to love and serve well, man, that's a great legacy for all of us. I pray that in my life. You know, Jason, we could talk a lot about. You know, the culture you've built and the things you've done. But I also think it would be cool, not for you just to talk about that. I think it would be pretty awesome to hear that from some other people too. So we took a video camera down. You didn't know this. And we interviewed some of your employees. And so I want you to hear what some people said who work for you and work with you.
Okay.
My name's Travis Binkley. I've been working at Flavor for about 10.5 years. The thing I love about working with Jason is he treats everybody with a lot of respect. He puts a lot of trust in his employees to get the job done without him having to micromanage.
My name is Mary Nell Hayes, and I have been with Flavor for about 3 years now. Jason influences the office culture in the way that he's created this family environment, and that's a phrase that he uses a lot, that we're a family here. Just the way that he kind of embraces us all for who we are, but one of the biggest things too for me about Jason is that he's going to get it done. So he's not scared to do the hard work. He's not scared to load up a van or you know, to jump in the kitchen on occasion, and he's willing to do so much work, and he just leads by that example. And at the end of the day, him and Leah lead this place with a Christ-like attitude, and that's what's the most important.
I am Jenna Lee. I've been working at Flavor for 1.5 years. Jason, as a founder and the owner of Flavor, is such a special guy, and he is really open about his faith and just spreading the word about Jesus, just even to our clients and to our employees. And he's got such a great attitude, and you know, makes a fun environment to work in. And that's one of the things that drew me into Flavor was Jason and Leah.
My name is Liz Leggett. I've been here at Flavor for about maybe 3.5 years now. What makes Jason so special here is how he treats everyone, and he treats everyone equally and fairly. Bottom line.
Jason does treat everybody with a lot of grace. People mess up, do the job wrong. He's not one to jump on somebody and, you know, be the angry boss. He's the person that treats you with God's grace you know, God has shown him. So that's why I respect him a lot.
Wow. Thank you for living it. I mean, seriously, thank you for living it. I mean, you're impacting so many lives. And I just wonder if people brought a video camera into every place we work, what people would say. But we have that opportunity to create a culture wherever we are that would put Christ first. And you've been doing that, you and Leah. And so we're proud of you and we're thankful for you. So, hey, we've got time for a couple of questions. So I don't know if you can answer them after that.
This will be a little bit easier, probably. Jason, how has God's provision early in your career changed the way that you plan for the future of Flavor?
How has God's provision early in your career? I think just seeing God's hand, even, when I first started cooking and different places that he took me, and he was preparing me all along the way. Yeah. There were places, even going back to the hospital, where I was like, why am I the chef of a hospital? But learning some skills there about this institutional food service management that I never would have pursued really opened doors. Later down in our career, we opened another business that did food service for schools and food service for a large office building. And so it's really cool, later in your career to be able to look back and see how all these steps that you really didn't know why you were in that place and what God was trying to teach you, but he had a plan that was so much greater than we could have imagined if we just can, believe and have faith in those moments that he knows he's got a big plan and we're just along for the ride.
I love that. I do think you're right. I think God never wastes an experience, right?
Yeah.
As you look back over your life, you can see how God's been orchestrating every step of the way, every job you've had or even hobby or something. And you look back and you go, if you put it in the hands, like you were talking about earlier, if you open your hands and just say, God, here it is, God will use all that. He'll use relationships.
Absolutely.
When you were the, chef and that guy said, well, I was one of your line cooks. Here's a kitchen. It's like you never dreamed that. But the way you treat people along the way and the way that you pour into people, God's building a greater story in you. And, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I love that.
We fight against it sometimes. I mean, I remember when we were down in Cool Springs and we had this kitchen that we were doing and I just had Selma and the property management lady came in and she was like, oh, that's a really cute picture of your daughter. By the way, you guys have to be out in 30 days. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, that was harsh, And I remember fighting so hard to hold on to that. And one of my guys found this kitchen available downtown on backpages.com, which I didn't even know that was a thing. And we moved down there. And I remember thinking, I was just sitting in that space and it was just thinking, God, what are you doing to me? Like, I had it so great over here, and why would you do this to me? Why would you, it was all about me, right? But that change was instrumental. Like, our business doubled after we went down there because we were right in the center and the hub of everything. And then subsequently, somebody sold us that building, which was crazy. Like, how does that even happen? But God just played a role in that sort of thing. But had I been left to my own devices, I would have fought to stay back over here and not have nearly the opportunities that I have now. But God had a plan that was so much greater than my own, and I just had to let go.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think so often we concentrate on what we don't have versus what we do have and what God is doing in our lives. And then we realize, man, possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
I've got a great God.
Totally.
Oh, you got time for another?
Okay, this is the Last Supper question. What is your favorite meal, and then what is your favorite meal to prepare?
Favorite meal to prepare is pretty easy. My abuelito, Leah's father, Lito and Lita, taught me how to make skirt steak fajitas. And anytime you come over to our house, you're going to get pico and guac and tortillas and skirt steak and all that stuff. And so it's just it just speaks of home when you walk in and you get all those smells and all that stuff. So that's probably my favorite meal to prepare.
So dinner tonight?
Yeah, just come on by. Everybody's welcome. What is my favorite meal? I would probably say the belly ham pizza at City House, if for no other reason than Tandy Wilson is a great chef and he's a good friend, and so that's what I would go with.
Dude, your sticky toffee pudding has got to be up there too.
It's up there.
I mean, that's like
And carrot souffle for
Carrot
Steve
souffle.
Davis right over there. You know, it's on it's on his bucket list too.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, one more.
Okay, this is from Scott Merriweather. Is Jeff jealous of Jason's beard?
I noticed you incorporated the facial hair
You like
just
that?
in time
You like
for
that
this.
today?
I don't know.
I did that for you, so
Right.
I need a little just for men though, right here.
Yes.
So I got to
You know,
work on that right there.
Get the color in. Thanks, Scott, for that question.
Thanks, Meriwether. It's awesome. So,
That's great.
Well, Jason, thanks so much. And man, I just tell you, God's using you, and we just love being on this journey with you and love serving God with you. Thank you for hosting MLN at Flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, how great is that? And thank you also for hosting Thrive. So you got Thursday mornings and Thursday nights.
Thursday night. Come on down, yeah.
So, but it's awesome. I mean, young adults are just packing into your place and hearing the gospel. And, and I know a big reason you did that was so that you could invite a lot of your employees to come and be a part, which
Absolutely.
is just that heartbeat to say, I want to share the love of Christ with others. And so thank you for modeling that for us and for sharing your heart with us. So let me pray for us right now, guys. Father, thanks for today. God, thank you for Jason and for Leah. God, I love them so much, and I love serving with them here at Rolling Hills. And God, I just thank you for the man that he is and a man after your heart. And Father, I pray for all of us. I pray, God, just as he even spoke about legacy and his legacy to love well and to serve well, Father. And I pray that for every one of us men, I pray that we would be men who love well. We would love you first and foremost. We would love our spouse, God. We would love our wives really well. We would love, Father, our children. And we would love the people that we work with. God, I pray that we would be really good bosses and employees and supervisors. And God, that we would impact people with the love of Christ by the way that we lead and the way that we love. So thank you for today, God. Use it to strengthen us in our leadership. Help us to grow to be the men that you've called and created us to be. And it's in the name of Christ that we pray. Amen. Amen. Awesome. Great.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. That's great. Okay, next week, final week, okay, last Men's Leadership Network for the fall series. We're going to welcome Williamson County Mayor Rogers Anderson. He's going to be here to discuss the impact of godly leaders in an election year. So we'll get going again with breakfast around 6:30, and we'll kick off at 6:55 and get you guys out around 7:45. Please join us.